Allee, official things?
I think maybe some official things.
Okay.
For an official event. Hello, welcome everybody on this auspicious occasion of the beginning of a 2-year journey into Chandakirti's Entering the Middle Way. We've had quite a lot of people sign up for this course, which is of course a testament to the fact that we have an incredible resident teacher here at Jamyang explaining the text, but also because the opportunity to study this text is actually quite rare, despite the fact that it's completely essential, as Geshe Namdak has often explained in other courses. His Holiness reads Chandakirti every single day. And, you know, the unique facets of this particular text include the fact that it penetrates Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom from both the point of the view, but also the vast activities of the Bodhisattva stages of realization. And also, as Geshe Namdak points out, a lot of that can seem very far away. Nevertheless, it is the path that we all have to traverse, one way or another. So, thank you very much, Geshe-la, for getting us onto the next leg of our journey to enlightenment. We really appreciate you offering this time to us for the next 2 years. Well, until the end of next year, with a few breaks in between. Don't want to overload people. And this is really, I wouldn't like to say a culmination, because hopefully we'll go on to do more things, but in a way it's the ripening of several years of in-depth philosophical studies that happen on a Wednesday evening. And it's an amazing vote of confidence on your part that you think we're ready for 2 years of Chandakirti, building on the studies of Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, and wisdom debating ignorance, and the 8 uncommon points of the Prasangika. So I feel that we have a group of people who are really, well, hopefully prepped for what's about to come. So thank you everybody online. I think we've got about 86 people online at the moment. There's about, I don't know, 30 people in the Gompa today. So thank you everybody for your amazing enthusiasm. Thank you to the Jamyang team who, I stand up here and you see my face, but actually most of the work is done by others. So, so just want to acknowledge that, and especially thank you, Geshe-la, for leading us into this text. Thank you very much.
All right, so welcome. I also have to thank Jamyang, because without Jamyang this is not possible, of course. Venerable Droma, our director, and Venerable Wangyal, our SPC, and there's so many other people involved running Jamyang. And as Venerable Wangyal said, over the Wednesdays, over the years, we did a lot of philosophy, in particular emptiness, right? So I thought maybe it's time to do something more in-depth and structured over a long period of time. And then in particular, one of the most important texts in the middle way philosophy, and well by Chandakirti, as Venerable Wangyal said, is a very important text, but also not an easy text. That's also, you have to know that you might be very enthusiastic in the beginning, but especially when we reach, chapter 6, then you will see it can be very challenging, right? But then, if you don't understand it straight away, then also you shouldn't get uptight or expecting you understand things straight away, right? That's very important with these kind of studies. You try to do your best, you read the commentaries, we have class, and we have Q&A sessions, and then over time you go through it. So this text we will do over 2 years. In the monastery we study it 4 years. And then not one evening a week, but 6 days a week, right? So and then we debate every day for hours, so that's kind of a difference. Yeah, but what I'm planning to do is to summarize the commentaries. Yeah, so mainly depend on the Geluk commentaries, not to get too much into different traditions, but initially is interesting. If you have studied one tradition well, then go into other traditions, interesting. But if you don't have studied one tradition well and you straight away go into different traditions, then you might get confused, right? So that's why it's initially important to study one tradition well and then enter or engage in other traditions, you know. So yeah, I mainly based the classes on of course, the root text. We will mainly go over the root text. And then there's, of course, very good commentaries, and the ones we study in Serraje Monastery University is Jessenchuk Gyaltsen, the general meaning of the middle way. Yeah, so that's one very good text, and the English, it's very good text for us if you're used to debate, you know. If you're not used to debate, it's very complicated. One of the academics who came to Serra one day, and he said it's too difficult to read. Yeah, the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary is much more accessible, because Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, eliminating the intent, yeah, which is a beautiful translation by Tibetan Jimbala, right? So that's kind of a very good commentary. Yeah, you can buy online if you like to buy. So if you depend on that commentary. Because I don't recommend you to read Jessenchuk Gyaltsen's commentary, which is part of the master program within the FPMT, right? Because in English it's very complicated, the debates back and forth. Yeah, so I would recommend for those who are really a little bit readers, then if you read Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, then translated by Tibetan Jimpa. Then I did some maths, and that's about 16 pages a week, right? So that's not just 1 or 2 pages, but it's about 12 to 16 pages a week if you want to finish the whole text in 2 years. But I will just summarize. I will not just quickly go over it. So I summarize the points. So then, if you have time, you can read by yourself, and we summarize it. We have Q&A sessions, and then you move into the material, right? For those who are not that inclined and don't have time to read that amount of pages every week, and we have breaks, right? We have a winter break when I go in hybrid mode, then we have a few months break, right? So there is opportunity. In the summer we have a month break, so you can catch up or read, you know. But I was thinking to do it a little bit more traditional in order to, for those who are already studying a bit more, to get a little bit more depth, you know. And that's why I thought initially I thought maybe do it in 1 year and summarize it all, but I thought why not do 2 years, as there's quite a nice group of people, and then we don't have to rush, you know, and that's important. But yeah, you have to commit yourself, and also have to know there will be aspects you're not familiar with, so try to read a little bit of tenets systems on the side, right? Those who do programs like the basic program, they're more or less a little bit familiar with the material because they have done tenets, right? So that's a very important aspect. But yeah, if that's all too much, you can just show up and read the root text. We do about 1 page a week or so, and then, you know, just see what you get out of it and try to read on the side whatever you can, right? And don't think you get understanding of it straight away. That is not going to happen at certain points, right? But yeah, so it's a very inspiring text, especially the Lama Tsongkhapa's eliminating the intent. Many monks and nuns in this system, and lay people also, who read that text, they change their minds, you know. It's very inspiring, because it's not just academic knowledge. If you read Lama Tsongkhapa's eliminating the intent, it's kind of similar to Shantideva's Bodhisattva way of life, yeah? The Bodhisattva Charavatar. It's very practice-oriented, and many people I saw change in these studies, so that's just a very powerful text, you know. So that's yeah, it's a very good text. So yeah, what else to say? Yeah. So yeah. So have the long-term vision, as I said before, and then you know, see how it goes, and then try to do your best. And then, if you don't understand, you can ask, And then we just move in 2 years to a very, very inspiring text by Chandrakirti, right? That's, from the point of view of emptiness, according to Manjushri, who taught Lama Tsongkhapa, one of the texts to depend upon, right? Yeah, so that's very clear. The importance of it. Okay, so then before we start, as the classes here will be based upon the Buddhist practice, right? I'm also connected with, do some things now in Oxford University, and things like there is more a secular presentation or more academic presentation, right? Although there are sometimes questions regarding the practice, right? But here we mainly focus also on the practical aspects, right? Because it's most of you are interested in the Buddhist path, or maybe even Buddhists, right? So that audience is slightly different from the academics. But of course, if you're an academic and you're not a Buddhist, that's also perfectly fine, right? We're not here to make people Buddhists. That's also, I want to make very clear. If you don't consider yourself as a Buddhist, but you're just interested in this philosophy, that's also perfectly fine, right? Yeah. But you just have to know that we will do some prayers in the beginning, and aspects of practice will be explained sometimes also. Then you know that the context is like that, right? Yeah. So then before we start, we will do every session, we do some prayers, because it's important to, for a Buddhist practitioner, to do prayers in the sense to go back to the origin. Yeah, we will do praise to the Buddha as the origin of the teachings of the Buddha, and then of course the Heart Sutra, which is the kind of root of the Buddhist teachings, right, on emptiness. And also the Chandrakirti's text is based on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, because it's based on Arya Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, which is based on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, right? So then the most essential one of that is the Heart Sutra. And then we do the Lion Face Dakini, and then because it's important to get the realization of the Lamrim, then we also recite the foundation of all qualities, yeah, in order to put imprints in our mind of the stages of the path to enlightenment. And then we start with the text, yeah. So before we do the prayers, first of all, as we start today's auspicious day, and a very auspicious text, and that's also very important to have a good and proper motivation, yeah. So try to think that, as Chandrakirti emphasizes, a great compassion in the beginning of the text. He praises great compassion rather than praising anything else, right? So try to think that how wonderful it would be if you really can generate a genuine form of compassion, to really have a wish to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. Or you can think, how wonderful would that be? May they be free of suffering, and may I cause them to be free of suffering, with the suffering of age, of birth, sickness, aging, and death. And that's all rooted in this fundamental aspect of afflictions and ignorance in particular. So for that purpose, I'm going to study this text in order to understand ignorance, in order to understand emptiness, to eliminate ignorance. And with that understanding, based on the motivation of compassion and bodhicitta, I do that in order to liberate all sentient beings without exception. Because they need us, they're stuck in samsaric suffering and waiting for us to do something about it. And we have an uncommon karmic connection with many sentient beings, right? Which other Buddhas might not have or do not have. So it's kind of responsibility we have to move in that direction. So try to generate the correct motivation for yourself. Yeah. And then in front, imagine Sakyamuni Buddha, surrounded by the masters of India and Tibet in particular. And then you could think, on the left hand of the Buddha, of course, there's the wisdom, and on the right, the method aspect. And in particular, in the wisdom aspect, also think that there's Arya Manjushri, first of all, and Arya Nagarjuna, And then, Buddha Palita, Pavika, and then, Janakirti, and all the masters all the way up to His Holiness Dalai Lama, you could imagine, right? And then, just think all the masters of the lineage are there, also for the method aspect, as well as, different deities, and Dakas, Dakinis, Dharma protectors, etc. Yeah. So imagine it all in front of yourself and surrounding yourself. Think countless beings are there in various forms, and wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And it's your responsibility to do something about this. And you take that responsibility into action as an auspicious connection by leading them in the prayers, right? And then while you recite the prayers, praise to the Buddha and the Heart Sutra, I think all those beings surrounding yourself, they plant the seeds to enlightenment, Yeah. So think like that when we recite praise together.
Page 73 in the Golden Book. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Sakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme signs, face like spotless moon, colour like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Saviour having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachments, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bound with bodies as many as all realms, atoms, and all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind thoroughly, this is the teaching of the Buddha. The star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagavan was dwelling on Mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajgir, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sounds, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharavatiputta, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety along with the world of gods, humans, asuras and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan.
I prostrate to the
gathering of the kinis in the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magic illumination, look after practitioners like a mother her child.
Akasamara sasana samarayape tayata gate paragate parasamgate bodhisoha. For the teaching to the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the haste of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions of Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here, right now. Page 93, Foundation of All Good Qualities. Foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect pure Guru. Correct devotion to the Guru is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. Please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, training supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Please bless me to see this, training supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings.
Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the 3 types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have pacified the attractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzed the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. Please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the 2 attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the 2 stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the 4 sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who showed the noble path, and the spiritual friends who practiced it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the stages and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Musajipaki Jokshing Meto Tramri Rablingji Nidegen Padi Sangye Jindu Mete Uwai Drogunam Dakshila Chupasho Jetsum Lama Dampakyenam Kichukyukhala Kensetunditri Jita Sampe Dujenzimara Zabyeche Gicharpa Vadusa Yidam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamriyatayami
Sangye Chedam Suni
Sonamla Janju Badu Dani Gabsuji Dagi June
Gibe Somangi Dola Penshe Sangye Drubasho Sangye Chedam Suni
Sonamla
Janju Badu Dani
Gabsuji
Dagi Chushe Gibe Somangi Dola Penshe Sangye Drubasho Sangye Chedam Suni Janju Badu Dani Gabsuji Dagi Chushe Gibe Somangi Dola Penshe Sangye Drubasho Yeah, so maybe start with a quote by Arya Nagarjuna. Kange tusin nisawe taba tamche pamache tamche dunje tunjaba gotam dela chatselo, which translates as that's a praise by Arya Nagarjuna to the Buddha, right? So you can find that praise, I think, in the 24th chapter of the Fundamental Wisdom, if I'm right. So there it says, you moved out of compassion. Yeah, that's the first line. So also Chandagirti, in the beginning of his text, as we will see, starts to actually praise great compassion, right? So here Arya Nagarjuna says, you moved out of compassion. So you is referring to the Buddha, moved out of compassion, referring to an uncontrived form of compassion or a realization, right? That the Buddha, of course, comes from a bodhisattva and then has bodhicitta been generated before that. So it's spontaneous, right? Yeah, compassion is spontaneous. So we often moved out of afflictions. Yeah, our mind is moved, or we get into emotional hijack. Yeah, so we are moved by afflictions. But if you train your mind in the Lamrim, then eventually you will be moved by the topics of the Lamrim. Yeah, because the topics of the Lamrim you will realize, and then becomes one part of yourself. So spontaneous, day and night. Yeah. So here, the first line, it says, you moved out of compassion, because that's the Buddha's motivation, right? If you study more about this, then you know that to have an uncontrived form of compassion does not come that easily, right? If you study the second chapter of the Pramanavartika, right? The text on logic and reasoning, among the 4 chapters, in the second chapter, then it starts with, why is the Buddha a valid person? Yeah, and there, Dharmakirti, with logic, proves why we can trust the Buddha. Yeah, so it's very interesting. In Buddhism, we check, right? So also Dharmakirti, a great scholar of Nalanda, checked, can we trust the Buddha? And if so, what are the reasons that we can trust the Buddha? Yeah, so there, in the second chapter of the Pramanavartika, there it talks about, the Buddha's aspect of omniscience, the Buddha's aspect of great compassion, yeah, and that's why we can trust a person like that, And that great compassion then is not just from one lifetime or many lifetimes, and then it goes into past and future lifetimes, the reasoning behind it, and then how to progress on the spiritual path all the way up to what we call a yogic direct perception or direct perception of emptiness, right? So it's very inspiring. Yeah. So here, in this quotation by Nagarjuna also, it says that the Buddha is moved out of compassion. Yeah, you moved out of compassion. This is the first line. Second line, you will eliminate wrong views. Yeah. So wrong views is not wrong views or you're wrong and I'm right. It's the wrong views in our minds. Yeah, all the afflictions we have, in the particular ignorance, as we're going to talk about a lot in this course, is misunderstandings of reality. Yeah, and that are wrong views. Yeah, and just not merely not knowing, but often we have since beginner's lifetime held on to misunderstandings of reality. Yeah, so the Buddhas, you see, the first purpose is the motivation, compassion. The second is the purpose, or I should say not the purpose, I should say the ability of the Buddha, right? You eliminate wrong views, because by depending on these teachings, we can eliminate ignorance, right? Yeah, so that's why we say, you move out of compassion, you eliminate wrong views. Means the wrong views in our minds, right? The wrong views of the afflictions. Yeah. You teacher of the sublime Dharma, So then, teacher of the sublime Dharma, teacher is referring to the Buddha. Sublime Dharma is referring to the teaching of dependent origination, proving emptiness. Yeah, as we're going to talk about quite a lot. Yeah, the different reasons to prove emptiness. Yeah, so you moved out of compassion, you eliminate wrong views. You teacher of the sublime Dharma of dependent origination, in particular in this particular verse. But yeah, it's also referring, of course, indirectly to the teachings of emptiness, right? Yeah, that if you really think like that, then you try to see why Chandrakirti's text is just so incredible, fortunate text, because it gives you the whole part, including very sophisticated understandings of emptiness, right? And that's the way to eliminate afflictions, right? So it's very fortunate, if you really think that to be able to study a text like this, extremely fortunate. So it's good to see there is interest, because generally speaking, people having interest in in-depth studies of these kind of points from the point of view of practice is very rare, So that's from that point of view very fortunate to be able to study Chandakirti's text. And it will happen that you don't understand it, or your mind gets negative, or you want to give up, you know. That is normal. Yeah. Also in the monastery, before we study this text, we do various kind of practices, you know, to prevent obstacles from coming into being, you know. Because, yeah, it's just very challenging. If you go against something you habituate your mind since beginner's lifetime, and now you go against that, of course, that gives a kind of, I would say, tension or friction, or you know. And that we went over, for those who are here a bit longer, than when we went over Panchen Losang Gyatsen's text on wisdom debating ignorance. It's very similar. That ignorance said, what, you, wisdom? You knew, I'm here since beginner's lifetime. You're gonna lose. They believe me, you know, they don't believe you. Nobody believes you. Where's an understanding of emptiness? Nobody. I'm the winner, right? So that's very interesting. So for us also, that will happen. When you study emptiness, you think, oh, it's all too difficult, and then you might give up. But don't give the victory to these afflictions, these negative thoughts of the past. You know, that's very important to recognize when those thoughts come up. Although the text might be challenging sometimes, but think, wow, at least I'm doing something with it, right? Rather than just putting it aside, you know. So that's important things to contemplate throughout the course. I normally give a lot of pep talks in the different Kasa courses, and people seem to find it helpful. So I will also do that in this course. Okay? Yeah. So Kasa, go back to the quote. You moved out of compassion. You will eliminate wrong views. You teacher of the sublime Dharma, to Gautam Buddha I pay homage. Yeah? So paying homage to the Buddha for the purpose of eliminating ignorance. That's exactly what Nagarjuna is doing. If you study Lama Tsongkhapa's biography, then also you see the first thing Lama Tsongkhapa does after realizing emptiness is praising the Buddha, right? He wrote this in praise of dependent origination. So by praising the teachings of dependent origination, he's praising the Buddha, and then he says that the Buddha is so incredibly kind to be able to, to have taught this doctrine that gives us the real antidote to its all afflictions, you know. So that's kind of very fortunate. I said we mainly depend on the Gelugpa commentaries in this course, but of course, I'm also a non-sectarian kind of personality. I have teachers in the other traditions. I've received teachings in the other traditions, Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya as well. And I study also the different traditions. But it's just if you want to get understanding of one text, then initially it's good to stick with one tradition and then later on study other traditions. Then it's very important, because then you get more insights, and then you see, oh, why does this scholar gives this interpretation and that scholar and that interpretation, right? So that's very important. So that's the quote by Arya Nagarjuna, referring to because the root text of the text we go over is also Arya Nagarjuna, right? So Arya Nagarjuna, as we know, came a few hundred years, depends which research you depend upon, a few hundred years after the Buddha's passing. And the view of emptiness, in particular, the view of emptiness of the middle way was degenerating, or was degenerated quite a bit. And in those days, mainly was Sautrantika and Vaibhasika schools who were pervading, right? And then Arya Nagarjuna came to refine the perfection of wisdom sutras, right? To clarify the teachings of the perfection of wisdom sutras. So maybe that as a little introduction for those who already study a little bit, then it's maybe interesting to have a look at, the different texts compiled by Arya Nagarjuna, Then you know a little bit of the structure and the history. So Arya Nagarjuna wrote, you could say, there's also different divisions in the different, in the Nyingma mostly we say 5, but in Gelug we have 6 texts. It depends if you put Ratnavali in the classification or not. Anyway, that's a detail. But so Nagarjuna came to refine the view of emptiness. So there's kind of 6 texts based on logic and reasoning, right? And then there's one text based on scriptural references that Nagarjuna also wrote a text called the Compendiums of the Sutra, in the context of all those 6 texts based on reasoning is not my own made-up thing. It's all based on the sutras, and then he proves that. Yeah, so that text is not very common, but that exists. And yeah, so then what is the most common one is, of course, the fundamental wisdom and Ratnavali, right? The cosa Umarinchi Changwa, you know. Yeah. So there are the 2 main important texts. Yeah. Yeah. But yes, also, so look at the structure why Nagarjuna did that. So, according to Jessenchuk Gyaltsen, then it says that in order to stop or eliminate the aspect of seeing things as inherent, as you know, all the schools of Buddhist philosophy, they say everything exists inherently, right? So in order to eliminate that view, that's with reasonings, that's why the Nagarjuna compiled the fundamental wisdom, right? And the fundamental wisdom is mainly, as you read it, mainly refuting Sautantrika views of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, that if you read through that particular text of fundamental wisdom, yeah, or the commentaries, whatever commentary you depend upon, yeah, then is that aspect. Yeah. So then after that, Arya Nagarjuna compiled another text which is called, one translation, Crushing to Fine Powder. So it's a very interesting title. So crushing to fine powder, what crushing, what kind of the views that establishes inherent existence. Yeah, so the fundamental wisdom is the root text, that's why it's called fundamental wisdom, right? Yeah. And then the supporting texts are the remaining 5. Yeah, so the one crushing to fine powder is a text that stops or eliminates the reasons behind the establishment of inherent existence from other schools of Buddhist philosophy, in particular the Sautantrika school. Yeah. Then that being refuted, right? Then to establish that on a conventional level there are things existing, right? We know that in the middle way philosophy we refute inherent existence or intrinsic existence, as the Jimba prefers, right? We eliminate intrinsic existence, but on the conventional level there's coming and going, right? We know that the view of dependent origination, right? Dependent proves that things are in the nature of dependent, so things do not exist inherently, right? Dependence proves things do not exist inherently, as Nagarjuna does in the fundamental wisdom mainly, right? But on the conventional level, things come and go. Yeah? Dependent origination. Yeah? The origination aspect is referring to the conventional reality. Things do exist, right? Yeah. So we always have to make clear what does exist and what does not exist. That distinction is very important. So that's then being explained in the 70 stanzas on emptiness. You know. In a similar way, also that has also been to eliminate the doubts regarding those points is then eliminated in refuting objections, you know, and then also Nagarjuna talks about how things conventional exist, how liberation conventional is possible in his 60 stanzas on reasoning, and then the Ratnavali, the precious garland. Then in the precious garland, he also says that conventionally it's possible to achieve omniscience, right? So you can see that it's a very structured way how we composed those 6 texts. Yeah? Certain texts are just refuting things, and other texts are for the purpose of establishing conventional reality, right? Yeah. Anyway, this is the detail. Okay, so that's the root text we look on. Yeah, that the root text of Nagarjuna, fundamental wisdom. You know. Yeah, so, I always say that, I don't know if I have to say that, but yeah, normally do that traditional. So yeah, I received this text many times in the commentaries, the root text, transmissions and commentaries, and the Jessenchuk Gyaltsen, and also eliminating the intent from or in the study programs as well as separate from different lamas, including you know. So yeah. So then maybe I think I'd read a little bit from the beginning, as auspiciousness, and then if there's interest, we can do the transmission maybe another day, just as a separate day or something. Because if you do it every evening, it will take time, and also sometimes you're not there, and it's always better to have it live than from a recording, right? So yeah, there's a lot of debates in between if you can receive from a recording or not. It depends on the faith you have, according to certain lamas. But yeah, it's always good. So maybe we do that another day, complete, if there's interest, you know. Yeah, because it's very important to receive transmissions. Or if you don't like, you can also just listen. Yeah, just having imprints of the mind of text like this is, yeah, it's just very precious. Yeah, I did it. There was a TV crew from the Netherlands who came to the monastery one day because they were looking for a person who did something completely different. You know, and then they contacted me, and then we had a telephone interview. In those days, it was still over the telephone interview to make sure I was not completely crazy, because they have to invest a film crew. It was a very popular program in the Netherlands called Klasgenoten. It was many years ago. And one of the better programs, I think. I mean, better program in the sense, I don't know the better, but a lot of viewers, you know. I think about, that few, maybe 1 million or something. So then at the beginning, because they needed something, they asked me, they need something exciting they never saw before. So I said, okay, close the light and put some light on, and I was reading from the beginning of this text. So at least people who don't, they at least get some imprints of the beginning of the text. All the other thing is just a nonsense kind of story, but yeah. Okay, so maybe I'd read a little bit, just from the beginning, that's auspiciousness. Yeah. Kyagere Maja Maga Avatara Nama Puga Dumala Juba Jawa Jamba Junaguba Laja Zala Neda Sangye Dinantubangi Sangye Janjusem Lerunji Nijisem Danizem Mevolo Janjusemni Kyazen Namgi Gu Ganji Tsini Kyawalundu Punso Desabun Dani Belwa Juda Yuring Du Lonje Nela Member Tabo Duguba Deje Dagi Dogma Ninja Tubagi. Yeah, so that's why I pray homage to great compassion, you know. So we can explain that. Yeah. So that's the start of the text. If you like to look at your root text, I think all of you have received the root text, right? The translation. You got permission from Wisdom and Thupten Jimbala to use that particular root text. So maybe first the title, you know, the title, Entering the Middle Way. So entering the middle way, Umala Jupa. So middle way, you can have various interpretations of middle way. You can think about the view of the middle way. You can think about the person who upholds the view of the middle way, right? There's various middle ways. But here, entering the middle way is a text, you know? And which text? And we call it the text of the middle way, and that is the text by Ari Nagarjuna called Fundamental Wisdom, yeah? That's the middle way, yeah? So the text, the title, the middle way is referring to Ari Nagarjuna's text, Fundamental Wisdom. Then it says entering, you know, because as you know, Chandakirti also compiled a text called the Clear Words. I don't know, is it translated or not? Yeah, anyway. The Clear Words is a word-by-word commentary by Chandakirti on the Fundamental Wisdom. Yeah? So that's a word-by-word commentary, and that is a different commentary than this particular one. And what is the difference? Because the entering into the fundamental wisdom is different. The Clear Words just explains. That's why the title is called Clear Words, just explains the meaning of the verses, right? Yeah, is kind of a clear word-by-word explanation. If you're interested and you have studied a bit more, Jetsen Mipam, one of the great masters of Nyingma tradition, also had has a very nice word by word, based on a word by word explanation of the root text as well, right? Fundamental wisdom. Yeah. But here Chandakirti uses another way to enter this text. Yeah, Chandakirti already has the clear words, which is a word-by-word explanation of the verses. But in this particular text, he says entering the fundamental wisdom in a different way. And there's two aspects to the entering. One aspect is ultimate reality, and one aspect is conventional reality. Yeah. So the way Chandakirti is entering and explaining the fundamental wisdom is from the two perspectives of ultimate reality and conventional reality. Yeah, and there's a lot of debate. I'm going to just share all the debates. I just go to the essence. So, from the ultimate perspective, it's entering from the point of view of eliminating other schools of Buddhist philosophy which are not really directly indicated in the fundamental wisdom. Yeah, that means eliminating the Kasa autonomy school, right? The middle way autonomy school, and eliminating the mind-only school. Yeah. So that's kind of an uncommon aspect here. That is not done in the clear words, and it was not really done before Chandakirti came. As you know, Arya Nagarjuna, a few hundred years after the Buddha's passing, compiled the fundamental wisdom, and then based on that, Buddha Palita wrote a commentary, right? And Buddha Palita commentary was then being read by Bhavavika, and he also wrote a commentary on Buddha Palita and refuted certain aspects of Buddha Palita, and Bhavavika actually established more the autonomy school view of Buddhist philosophy. So you see the schools of Buddhist philosophy, they came over time by different interpretations that were being given, right, and then after Bhavavika, then Chandakirti came, to make it clear that Buddha Palita was right in the sense he was according to the consequent school of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, and Arya Nagarjuna was also upholder of the consequent school of Buddhist philosophy. So Chandakirti in this particular text, that's why this text is so precious, because it eliminates all the other schools of Buddhist philosophy with regards to emptiness, right? Yeah, so that's why it's very precious. If you just read the fundamental wisdom, then it's not that easy, because after that you see there's different interpretations possible, and then Chandakirti came to clarify these points. Yeah, so that's why Chandakirti is just such an incredible, great master. Been praised by His Holiness and also by Atisha. When Atisha came to Tibet, before Atisha came to Tibet, then Chandakirti's works were not that well known, right? But yeah, Atisha also praised Chandakirti a lot, and maybe after that there was more exposure to that, so from an ultimate perspective, the way Chandakirti is entering the text or giving a commentary on the text is from the point of view of eliminating because Nagarjuna did already refute the Sautrantika school, right, the Sutra school, but then after that there were other kind of middle way schools like the autonomy school, right, Bhavavika. So then Chandakirti also refutes that, and also refutes the mind-only school, So that's kind of why Chandakirti is what we call in one way, in particular Jesser Gyaltsen, he says he is the trailblazer of the Prasangika, because he clarifies the consequent school, right? Yeah. So, but there's definitely interpretations in our other college, Sarame, they say it's Buddha Palita, and some other scholars they say no, it's Nagarjuna. There's just different interpretations, right? Yeah. But I'm Sergey, so joking. So in Sergey we say it's Chandakirti for that reasons, because Chandakirti of entering, the way of entering from an ultimate perspective, is make a distinction between, okay, this is autonomy school, this is the consequent school, and this is the mind-only school, right? So then that's why it becomes clearer, Yeah, so that's the ultimate way of entering the fundamental wisdom, And there's also a conventional way of entering the fundamental wisdom, which is not done in the clear words also, for example. So what is that conventional aspect? Is the parts and the grounds, That according to certain interpretations, that he takes the precious garland, to use also from Arya Nagarjuna, to present the part as well. Not just emptiness, but also the part. Yeah. So, as you know, in order to achieve omniscient mind of a Buddha, you need first bodhicitta, then you have a conceptual realization of emptiness. That conceptual realization has to be developed in a direct perception, and you go over the 5 parts, right? Yeah, the part of accumulation, part of preparation, the part of seeing, part of meditation, and then you accomplish part of no more learning. Yeah, if you recite the Heart Sutra, Tayata, Gata Gata, Paragata, Parasamgata, Bodhi Soha. Yeah, that mantra is exactly explaining that aspect, of the 5 parts, So that's kind of a very sophisticated way Chandrakirti is actually entering and giving a commentary on Chandrakirti's work, because he takes from an ultimate perspective the different schools of Buddhist philosophy to make the consequent school or the Prasangika school very clear. And then also he builds the paths around it, So in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, we have those 2 aspects, as we know, right? Also in the Heart Sutra, we just read, we have the direct meaning, of emptiness, That the direct meaning of emptiness: no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, right? So no inherent eye, no inherent ear, no inherent this, no inherent that. That's the kind of, in every sutra, that's what we call the directly indicated aspect of the profound emptiness. Yeah. So every sutra in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras has the direct indicated profound emptiness. Yeah, which is about emptiness: no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, right? And it also has indirectly the hidden meaning of the realizations, and that's in the mantra Tayata, Gata Gata, Paragata, Parasamgata, Bodhi Soha. Yeah, so that's the hidden meaning of the parts, and that's exactly what Chandrakirti also uses. That this text is built up in 11 sections. Or 11 chapters, if you wish. Yeah. So then the first 10 are more or less, there's an introduction first of all, and then there's kind of the 10 grounds, the 10 bhumis, as we have, the 10 bhumis from the part of seeing until enlightenment. Yeah. So we call it the 10 grounds, how you progress. And that is then the 10 grounds. You could also refer to the relation with the 10 perfections. We have the 6 perfections, right? Yeah. And on top of the 6 perfections, we have the 4 extra ones: skillful means, top, murlam, yeshe, aspiration, power, and primordial wisdom. Yeah, so that's kind of we have 10 grounds, referring to, sometimes we say 10 perfections. Yeah, so then and then the 11th chapter is then the result of it. Yeah, the ground of the Buddha. Yeah, so that's kind of how the text is structured. Yeah, you can see that chapter 6 is the Perfection of Wisdom, right? Is the biggest chapter and the most interesting chapter from the point of view if you're interested in emptiness, But yeah, the previous chapters are also just very interesting to see various aspects of the paths, right? How to actually become a Buddha yourself, So that's why Chandrakirti's text, entering the middle way, or sometimes translated as supplement to the middle way. And there's also something to say for, because it supplements the parts, right? It explains emptiness, but then it supplements the parts, Yeah, so there's 2 ways of entering the middle way. Yeah, the middle way is the text Fundamental Wisdom by Arya Nagarjuna, and the way of entering from an ultimate perspective and from a conventional perspective. The way it's been entered from an ultimate perspective is to refute all the schools of Buddhist philosophy, to clarify the consequent school. And from a conventional entering, Chandrakirti gives the commentary on, depending on the precious garland, also by Arya Nagarjuna, to present the paths. Yeah, so that's kind of the title explained. So Arya Nagarjuna, we just talked about 7 of his texts. We talked about 6 texts of reasoning. And then the seventh one is this compendium of the sutras, yeah, where he compiled that all those 6 texts based on reasoning are not his own made-up thing, but they came from the Buddha sources, right? So that's kind of 7 scriptural works or treatises by Arya Nagarjuna, very profound. But also Nagarjuna wrote many practical aspects, like the letter for a friend, for example. Yeah, the letter for a friend is basically a Lamrim style text. Yeah, we often say, the Atisha, of course, incredible being, was, we could say, the trailblazer of the Lamrim, right? But also at the time of Arya Nagarjuna, there was a structure of the Lamrim. If you read the letter for a friend, for example, right? Yeah. So that's also one category of the text by Arya Nagarjuna, right? The practical instructions, so to say. But Nagarjuna also wrote many praises. Yeah, he wrote praise of Dhammadhatu, praise of the Vajra mind, praise of honoring sentient beings. That's very inspiring text. He wrote as well. Yeah. So then we know a little bit where it comes from. So here, the middle way is referring to the fundamental wisdom, right? And then you see it starts added by the translator in the translation we have. It says the first ground, perfect joy. Yeah. Okay. That's why we're here, because we want perfect joy, right? Yeah. But, not any joy, but we need the perfect one. So that's the first ground, referring to the perfection of practicing the perfection of generosity, right? Yeah, in the 6 perfections. Yeah. So they're referring the perfection of joy, because the bodhisattva, when the bodhisattva hears there's an opportunity to accumulate merit in order to progress on the paths to enlightenment, then it generates incredible bliss in the mind. If somebody asks for something, even more bliss than a person who's liberated. Yeah, it says, Of course, you have already direct perception of emptiness, right, on the first ground. So you're quite an advanced practitioner. Yeah. Okay, and then the actual text starts. And then there's first the homage. I pay homage to the gentle Lord Manjushri. So that's added by the translator. Yeah. Patsap Lotsawa was the main translator of this text, and then later on was being verified, and Ngolotsawa also made a kind of translation. But that translation seems to be lost, because later Patsap Lotsawa corrected Ngolotsawa's root text again. But at the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, both texts were present, because Lama Tsongkhapa refers to both, Yeah. So yeah, here's a pay of homage, by the translator. So that's not part of Chandrakirti's text. That's always in the beginning. In Tibet, when you had this incredible translators, incredible Lotsawas, who were so hard, and they had uniform language. It's incredible translations. They're very accurate. If you talk with Sanskrit scholars in Varanasi, there's a lot of research being done between Sanskrit scholars and together, and some of the Sanskrit scholars also know Tibetan, to see the accuracy of these kind of works. A few of my friends in Oxford University, Jan Westerhof and a few students, they also know the 2 languages. So at the moment they're reading this text in Sanskrit as well as Tibetan together. So I just met them last Thursday, and we discussed a few things. Very inspiring, if you hear the stories. And then Jan Westerhof also said it's very accurate. The Tibetan translation is extremely precise. But yeah, if you read in Sanskrit, it's probably very inspiring. I told them that's very inspiring to do something like that, right? Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I don't know. My mind is not I'm not that intelligent, so I don't have any knowledge of Sanskrit. I only hanged out in the monastery for a few years, so I heard a little bit of Tibetan. But yeah. But here it's been the homage of the gentle Lord Manjushri. Yeah? So the translator is paying homage, and the translator is paying homage in order to remove obstacles, to complete the text, and to accumulate merit. If we know in Buddhist practice, paying homage is a very important aspect in the Seven Limb prayer, for example, right? Yeah. And then it's not to any deity, but here to Manjushri. And that's referring to the deity of wisdom. Yeah? And the deity of wisdom is the deity that belongs to the Abhidhamma Pitaka. Yeah? If you have the three baskets of the Buddhist teaching, right? We have the Vinaya Pitaka, we have the Sutra Pitaka, we have the Abhidhamma Pitaka. And the Vinaya Pitaka is referring to morality, as we know. And the Sutra Pitaka is referring to the higher training of concentration. Yeah? And the Abhidhamma Pitaka is referring to the higher training of wisdom. Yeah? So we have the three higher trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. So here you can see that the translator indicates that it belongs to the Abhidhamma Pitaka among the three, right? And that's in Tibet. The Tibetan translator made a system in all the texts to make that clear. To which basket does it belong among the three? And according to that, we write a homage. So people read the homage. They know if you pray to Manjushri, then it belongs to the Abhidhamma Pitaka. If you praise to the Buddhas in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, in the Sanskrit tradition, right? If you pay homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, then it belongs to the Sutra Pitaka. Yeah? If you pay homage to the Omniscient One, you pay homage to the Vinaya Pitaka. Because the Vinaya Pitaka talks about morality, it talks about vows, and those vows are based on karma, and only an omniscient Buddha has a complete understanding of karma, right? So that's why we say, I pay homage to the Omniscient One in the Vinaya Pitaka of the higher training of morality. Yeah? And Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in the Pitaka of the Sutras, right? The Sutra baskets, because in the Sanskrit tradition, the Bodhisattva ideal is very important, and that's why you pay homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Yeah? And then wisdom, without depending on Manjushri, then it's very difficult to realize emptiness, as Lama Tsongkhapa did himself, right? That he depended on Manjushri a lot in order to eventually realize emptiness. Not that Manjushri gave him a special pill or something like that, or a blessing. That's very interesting. Often we want to see Buddhas and have visions and those kind of aspects. But so Lama Tsongkhapa saw Manjushri and they talked like you and me, And then Manjushri said something very clear that, when Lama Tsongkhapa asked, do I have the correct understanding of emptiness according to the autonomy school or the consequence school? And then Manjushri said, neither. And then Lama Tsongkhapa said, what? So then he said, what do I have to do to get it? And then he had to, and then you see how important that is. He had to do a lot of preliminary practices, right? Yeah, purify the mind, accumulate merit, yeah, see the teacher as one with the deity, and read the great scriptures, yeah, including Chandrakirti's works, Buddha Palita, and of course Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna. And then after 4 years in retreats, doing, 3.5 million prostrations, right, and a similar amount of mandalas, then making prayers and working hard for a few years, 4+ years in Olga, then he realized emptiness. You see, so that's kind of important aspect. Yeah. Depend on Manjushri, but also study and contemplate, and also do accumulation of merit and purify negative deeds. Yeah. Okay, so the first verse, it says, Shravakas and middle-level Buddhas arise from the sovereign sage, or the Buddha. So Shravakas is referring to the hearer vehicle, right? Those who are liberated, the Arhats, or Shravakas, right? They call hearer. Or Sravaka is referring to listening. Yeah, so why listening? Because they listen to the teachings, put it into practice, get the realizations, and then teach others. That's why we call them hearers. And they strive for liberation for themselves, right? Yeah, there's a kind of what we call the individual liberation, or the pratimoksha, right? They strive for individual liberation. Yeah. The middle level Buddhas refers to the solitary realizers. Yeah, the middle-level Buddhas are the solitary realizers, or the prachekas, so to say. So the solitary realizers or prachekas, they not only strive for liberation, but they also have this wish in their last lifetime, when may they appear where there's no Buddha. and may they inspire by achieving the result, yeah, by sitting and meditating and inspire people, you know. That's kind of the second one, the middle level Buddhas or the prachekas or solitary realizers. Yeah. Both of them, they arise from the Buddha. Why do they arise from the Buddha? Because they arise from the teachings of the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha's teachings on the Four Noble Truths, yeah, and the Buddha's teachings on the 12 links, and then the Buddha's teachings on emptiness, right? Based on that, then they achieve their goals, right? So you can see that Shravakas and Prachekas, they rise, their results to become liberated arises from, initially, depending on the teachings of the Buddha, right? Yeah, so that's why they arise from the Buddha. You know. So that's kind of, it's a very interesting verse, you know. So Shravaka, you can get liberation in 3 lifetimes, according to the most commentaries, if you're on the path. If you have renunciation, yeah, if you have this wish to be free of samsara, then, and that wish is kind of spontaneous, and that wish is kind of uncontrived, as we call it, you know, a realization of renunciation, then you can accomplish in 3 lifetimes, you know. And the middle level Buddhas, or the Prajeka or the solitary realizer, takes about 100 eons. It's a bit longer, right? And then, of course, for the Bodhisattva, for the Buddhas, it's kind of 3 countless eons, yeah, according to the sutra part, right? Yeah, and that's the Bodhisattva of the highest faculties. Kyaltsabje, in his commentary on the Abhishamalankara, he states that there are also quotations of 46 countless eons. Yeah, so that's kind of quite long. Yeah. But yeah, luckily we also have the Vajrayana, where things go a bit faster. But even if it's 3 countless eons, as His Holiness says, once you're on the path, you go in that direction. And you're helping beings already, right? So that's kind of, that's the inspiring aspect, you know. You should not have this kind of wish, oh, I want to have a shortcut to enlightenment. I often get those questions. Oh, do I have to study this or to become enlightened or not? People ask questions like that. But, you know, if you think of Naropa, when he had this vision of Vajrayogini, and then she said, okay, you've been a scholar for 500 lifetimes, now it's time to get a guru and practice and get enlightened, right? So that gives us a perspective, right? That if Naropa and Atisha was very similar, right? Yeah, being a scholar for hundreds of lifetimes, right? So that's kind of, get your mind into the vast vision. That's the thing. Yeah. Once you have this vast vision, then you study for 2 years this incredible text, right? And then you can take it easy in the sense you don't have to rush, because you know you're planting the right seeds and you go in the right direction, right? Some people, they rush into something and then halfway through they run out of breath and then they put it aside. Yeah, so that's not very clever. Yeah, I didn't learn much in the monastery of philosophy, but I know how to relax. Okay, sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, then the second line, it says, Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas. So here, Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas from the point of view, if you are a Buddha, within the same continuity of consciousness, you were a bodhisattva before, right? So that's referring to that aspect. Yeah, that in order to become a Buddha, you first have to be a bodhisattva. Yeah, without a bodhisattva being a bodhisattva, you can never become a Buddha. You know, yeah. So Buddhas are born from bodhisattvas. Yeah. And of course, there's also interpretation in Geshe Gyaltsen that also, if you are a bodhisattva and you depend on other bodhisattvas to receive teachings and to progress in order to become a Buddha, right? But the real meaning here is, you see, liberated beings, like in the first line, they arise from the teaching of the Buddha, right? Then the Buddhas, who are so powerful to lead beings to liberation, they arise from bodhisattvas, because they were bodhisattva before, you know. And then bodhisattvas, they arise from 3 courses, you know. There it says in 3rd and 4th line, the compassion mind being 1, yeah, compassion. A non-dual cognition being 2, and the waking mind being 3. So these are the 3 courses for a bodhisattva, you know. The compassion mind is referring to great compassion, right? So there's a distinction between compassion in general and great compassion, right? Great compassion is kind of a wish that takes responsibility. Yeah, if you do the four immeasurables, you say, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings be free of suffering. May they be free of suffering. Yeah, that's a general compassion. But then if you say, I will cause them to be free of suffering, that's the great compassion, right? Or sometimes being considered, Mijilobsen Tsering used to say, Kyabdogi Ningji means a wish to be a refuge for others, to liberate others, right? That's great compassion, to take that responsibility. So that's here the compassion that's referring to. Yeah. Non-dual cognition. Non-dual cognition is referring to a non-dual from the point of view of the two extremes of absolutism and nihilism. Yeah? So absolutism and nihilism, as we already talked about, by the power of the teaching on dependent origination, you don't fall into those two extremes. Yeah? You eliminate the extreme of absolutism by seeing that things do not exist inherently or intrinsically, right? And you do not fall into the extreme of nihilism if you understand dependent origination, that conventionally there's a person sitting there and you are thinking and you're writing things down and you're processing the information, right? So conventionally there's a person there, right? Yeah. So yeah, non-dual cognition is referring to the non-duality of being free of the two extremes, yeah, according to Lama Tsongkhapa's interpretation. And then the third one is the awakening mind. Yeah, so these are the three courses for bodhisattva to arise, right? And why is that so? Because the majority of bodhisattvas, they realize emptiness before realizing bodhicitta. So that's why the non-dual cognition is there. You know? Because most bodhisattvas realize emptiness before realizing bodhicitta. You know, often we think, oh, bodhicitta is easier than realizing emptiness, but actually, according to the scriptures and according to people with experience, it's not the case. Realizing emptiness is easier because it's just a matter of fact having the right conditions ready. You use reasoning and you can get it. You know, by bodhicitta, you need a long period of time to habituate your mind. You know, so and also Genima, one of the great masters of recent times, from Ganden. You know, we met in '94, and Genima, he accomplished the part of preparation, people said. So he had a realization of emptiness, and he's on the paths, right? So he also said that it's easier to realize emptiness than realizing bodhicitta, you know. So among Gyaltsab J in his commentary on the Abhishamalakara says, all the bodhisattvas' highest faculties, that means bodhisattvas who have a lot of merits, bodhisattvas who are very skillful, who have a lot of effort, you know, those bodhisattvas, all of them realize emptiness before realizing bodhicitta. Among the bodhisattvas of lesser faculties, he says, the majority realizes emptiness before realizing bodhicitta. Yeah, so that's why one of the reasons why here is one of the three courses for bodhicitta to arise, you know, for the bodhisattva to arise, right? So there's three courses for the bodhisattva to be established, because the bodhisattva is a person who has bodhicitta. Right? So then what is the course for bodhisattva is, of course, the mind of bodhicitta, right? But also great compassion and this realization of emptiness, right? Yeah? And among those three, then the root cause, the root of all this is great compassion. The substantial cause is great compassion, you know? Yeah. And that's why Chandrakirti is praising great compassion. Why is great compassion the root cause? Because, you know, bodhicitta is a main mind having two aspirations, right? Bodhicitta is a main mind having two aspirations, and what are the two aspirations? One aspiration is to liberate beings from suffering, and the other aspiration is to achieve enlightenment for that purpose, you know? So, if you don't have the first one, then the second one will not arise. If you do not have compassion, then wishing Buddhahood will not arise. Yeah? So that's exactly why great compassion is a substantial cause for bodhicitta to arise. You know? And we know also that from the 7 instructions of cause and effect, yeah, in the Lamrim, or the exchanging self for others. It's the compassion that moves you to want to liberate others, right? And it's the compassion when you want to liberate others, you see, I don't have the capacity now to do that. I need Buddhahood. I need an omniscient mind, right? So that's kind of why we say compassion is the substantial cause. That's one of the 2 aspirations of Buddhaccitta, right? And then you want to become a Buddha in order to accomplish that wish to liberate others. And then you have the 2 aspirations, and then the main mind of bodhicitta has been generated. Yeah, but it's all rooted in great compassion, right? Same with the exchanging self for others method. We know when you engage in exchanging self for others and tonglen practice, then it's to enhance your compassion. The stronger your compassion is, and then you do this tonglen practice, and then you finish with the tonglen practice, and you think, oh, this was just a visualization. In order to really do something, I have to, achieve a state of enlightenment, And then you generate this kind of, wish to become a Buddha, you see. So that's kind of why I have those 2 aspirations needed to generate a waking mind, to generate bodhicitta, and the root cause is great compassion. And then in the second verse, it's the first 2 verses that go together, right? It says, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed. Yeah, it's the root cause, it's a substantial cause for bodhicitta, so it's referring to the seeds of the harvest of Buddhahood, And then when you have bodhicitta, then the stronger your compassion is, then the water that nourishes this seed to produce the fruit of the enjoyments of Buddhahood, right? So that's what also Chandrakirti says, compassion is important in the beginning, in the middle, and the end. Yeah. So yeah, and then for that purpose, I praise compassion at the start of all of this. That's kind of how Chandrakirti is praising great compassion, because of those reasons, Yeah. Yeah, so we did on 2 verses, but that's okay. It's the first evening, right? Yeah. But yeah, it's important, no? You can see the compassion aspect is, without compassion, there's no bodhicitta. And without bodhicitta, your realization of emptiness will not produce the power to eliminate the obscurations and achieve enlightenment, right? So that's kind of, important aspects of the path initially. And it's very interesting, because most authors, they praise the Buddha, or they praise a particular teaching of the Buddha, or deity, or whatsoever. But here, Chandrakirti is praising great compassion, because all the things arise from great compassion. Yeah, liberation indirectly arises from great compassion, because great compassion produces bodhicitta, that produces a bodhisattva, that produces a Buddha, and that produces the teachings of the Buddha, and that produces liberated beings, right? And for those who are inclined to achieve enlightenment, exactly the same thing. Yeah, that it all starts with great compassion, you see. So that's in a text by Chandrakirti on emptiness is quite a teaching that great compassion is so essential, right? Yeah. Okay. So maybe we stop there for today, no? 8 o'clock. Yeah. Okay. If there's any questions today, we didn't do much philosophy, but so maybe the questions are not really there. Yeah, but they'll come up soon. Yeah. In the next verse already, there's a view of the Transitory collection for next week, Yeah. But if there's any questions, then we can, see if there's an answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Geshe-la. While people are getting their questions ready in their minds, we have one that came through in the chat. How does Tibetan Buddhism consider acts of sacrifice? Are they signs of compassion or just harmful actions? And as an example, this person put forward the example of Jesus, sacrificing himself for sentient beings.
Yeah. I mean, if you talk about animal sacrifices or things like that we consider as a harmful act. Yeah. If you kill other beings, as we see sometimes in Nepal or in Asian traditions, that they kill animals in order to make offering, right? So that as Buddhists we see that as a harmful act. Yeah. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is like Jesus sacrificing yourself for the purpose of others. I mean, when Jesus was being put on the cross, then it's been done by others, right? So then he was basically having compassion for others and forgiveness for others, as you see, you know, if it's Jesus or Franciscus von Assisi or those great masters of the Christian tradition, who knows? Maybe they were bodhisattvas, right? We don't know, you know. If you are a bodhisattva, then you do whatever is possible to benefit beings. If Buddhism is not a suitable form of faith for a particular group of people, you will show another aspect, right? And then you could say, you know, sacrifice in the Tonglen practice also we do similar aspects, right? We take suffering of others upon ourselves, you know, in order to purify and in order to generate compassion, right? And bodhisattvas on the high realizations, on the first ground and above, they also give parts of the body and things like that, right? So then, and that's not just to harm yourself, but in order to accumulate merit, yeah, in order to benefit others and accumulate merit. So there's a very practice on a very high level, yeah. So we ordinary beings, we should not engage in those practices, yeah. That's only when you really have a direct perception of emptiness, then probably you can talk with some bodhisattvas and how to do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Geshe-la. There's another question in the chat here. Is there a link between Chandakirti / Nagarjuna and the teachings of Longchenpa in Nyingma?
Yeah. If there's a relation?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Longchenpa, one of the great masters in the Nyingma tradition, also wrote various commentaries, you know, or on the different texts, including his most famous 7 treatises, right? The treasures, you know. So that's what I said, you know. Is if you really study the views well, then there's not that much contradiction. It's only from which tenet system is being explained and from the sutra or the Vajrayana it's been explained. For example, if you do in Longchenpa Rabjampa's works, the seven treasures, for example, and you study the tenet system in there, then you see it's from the point of view of sutra and tantra together being explained. Well, in Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, it's mainly first sutra, so this text is sutra-based, so all the explanations are sutra, and then in the Kyusamaja systems and other systems, then the tantric aspect is being explained. So it's very important to know the context, yeah? Because if from the sutra perspective, then the tantric view is different, yeah? So then you might see differences between Lama Tsongkhapa's sutra-based explanation and Longchenpa or other Nyingma masters, including Jesse Mipam sometimes, explain it from the angle of the result or the mind of the Buddha, right? So it's always very important to know how does this author explain? What is the background? From which point of view is the explanation? If it's from within Sutra and Tantra, or if it's only Sutra-based, or which school of Buddhist tenets is being explained, that's very important. And if you study those aspects well, then there's not much contradiction. If you, for example, even in various short texts, very inspiring texts also by Longchen Rabjampa, Neluk Dzu, the treasure of, how to translate that? The treasure of reality. I'm not sure how it's been translated. But in the Neluk Dzu, there also Longchen Rabjampa says very clear similar things. Things empty of inherent existence, and it's very clear, you know, so we talk about the same thing. But certain aspects is just a different angle, because Longchen Rabjampa sometimes in the tenet systems, for example, also brings the Vajrayana in or things like that. So yeah, so it's important to know the context, and then there's no real contradiction. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. That's it. Oh no, one's just snuck in there right at the end. Entrance to the Bodhisattva path of accumulation is uncontrived bodhicitta. Inferential realization of emptiness and direct experience of emptiness are realized on paths of preparation and seeing according to the explanations. This seems contradictory to realizing emptiness being easier than realizing bodhicitta. Could Geshe-la comment on this?
So when I say realization of emptiness easier than bodhicitta, means a conceptual realization of emptiness. Yeah. So the conceptual, the direct perception of emptiness only happens on the path of seeing, and that only happens after having having generated bodhicitta, right? Yeah. So of course that's a different story. But when we talk about the initial realization of emptiness, which is a conceptual realization, that's easier than generating bodhicitta. Yeah. So because you can realize emptiness before entering the path of accumulation, and the majority of the bodhisattvas, they realize emptiness before entering the path of accumulation, right? So they realize emptiness, and although they work on bodhicitta at the same time, not at the same mind, but in the same period, and then over time, then they realize emptiness, and then they generate uncontrived bodhicitta, and then they enter the path of accumulation. And then they refine their realization of emptiness. That's what it is, right? Initially, then they refine it, and there's various aspects of refining it, with a calm abiding focused upon emptiness, and then a non-duality of calm abiding, a special insight of emptiness, and then you go to the part of preparation, for example, you know. So, but the initial realization, which is conceptual, of emptiness, that seems to be easier than an uncontrived form of bodhicitta. But the practitioner, you know, contemplate emptiness for a few sessions and contemplate bodhicittas for a few sessions, right? And then realize emptiness, and then bodhicitta becomes stronger, and that's very clear if you study the first verse of the 9th chapter of Kasa, of Shantideva, right? Yeah, it's a very interesting commentary. Or commentaries also by the two Nyingma masters, you know, of Belden Zangpo and Menak Rinpoche. So those commentaries very clearly explain that the first verse is very similar. That, you know, once you have realization of emptiness, your bodhicitta becomes stronger. You know, also in Saraha's doas or spiritual songs, or Mahamudra, there's a very inspiring verse in the same way. Once you realize Mahamudra, compassion increases, right? So that's also true, and it's also true from the point of view of renunciation. Yeah, in Jessenchuk Gyaltsen text, it's reference to that. Also in Khyalsab J's commentary on the Uttara Tantra, it says very clearly that if you, the most, you know, of the person of highest faculties first realizes emptiness and then realizes renunciation. Same thing. Yeah? Because if you have realized emptiness, you know you can eliminate ignorance, so you know liberation is possible. Right? So your renunciation becomes much stronger. And as Holiness Dalai Lama says so many times, once you have some understanding of emptiness, you know liberation is possible. Right? So that's also indicates from various angles, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's it online. Anybody in the compa? Oh, okay. Yes.
So there's a question on compassion, because we talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe basic, but
yeah.
So how does how does compassion like add up? For example, you can have compassion to help a lot of people, but you would have to hurt fewer people to do that. How does that result, like, overall?
Depends. Sometimes you can help others without hurting others, or not? Huh?
Not always.
Then you have to see what's most beneficial, right? The Bodhisattva always checks short-term and long-term benefits, you know, and then makes a decision based on that, you know. And if you have kind of a pure motivation, then you can do that. But whatever harm you bring to others has consequences, you know. There's no person, no sentient being beyond law of cause and effect. Yeah? Even if you have bodhicitta, you're not beyond law of cause and effect. You have to be careful with karma, right? So then they contemplate what's most beneficial in the short and long term, and they decide what to do, you know. So it's kind of very, very interesting approach of one's behavior. You always check long and short-term benefits, and you just evaluate what's most beneficial, right? And then you make a decision. Because everything in life has consequences, right? Even in our day-to-day life, we have to make decisions, and we just constantly see what's a long-term, short-term, long-term benefit, and then we make a decision, you know? Yeah. Yeah? But yeah, there's no exception to karma, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe, and I'm glad you're back teaching after a long break.
Yeah, good.
So I think one question has something to do, you mentioned when you said consequence school refutes middle way Svatantrika. But actually, if you look at some of the middle way Svatantrika presentations of emptiness, for example, Dzogchen, that to me seems much, much closer to what Nagarjuna talks about than, for example, what the Lamrim says. So the Lamrim says it's just lack of inherent existence, whereas Nagarjuna goes beyond that and says it's neither existent nor non-existent. So if Svatantrika, middle way Svatantrika, is refuted by Nagarjuna, why is that closer to Nagarjuna than the so-called world?
Yeah, but just in relation to one other question with regard to Longchen Rabjamba, for example, same thing. In the Dzogchen tradition, you have to understand that it's based on the Vajrayana, right? Yeah, Dzogchen tradition, the Dzogchen Ati Yoga is based on the ninth vehicle within the Nyingma tradition, right? And the ninth vehicle is based on having accomplished the generation and completion stages, right? The Maha and Ati Yogas, right? And then you talk about the Ati Yoga of the Dzogchen. So that means that you have a very subtle mind that realizes emptiness, which is not in accordance with the sutra system, right? So it's a Vajrayana part. So that means the Vajrayana part explanation of how emptiness is being explained is different from the sutra explanation, how it's been explained, because it is the Dzogchen, and we see exactly the same thing as in the Dzogchen in the Kuya Samaja system of Gelug, right? Then also we talk in the same lines as we talk in the Dzogchen tradition, that from the point of view of the experience of the meditator, you know, that being four of those extremes of neither existent nor non-existent, right? So that means that it's beyond comprehension. Yeah? From a direct perception of a subtle mind is beyond comprehension, right? So taking that into account, then in the Gya Samaja system we talk about exactly the same thing. But here it's sutra-based, so Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, you have to understand, as I just indicated, there's text that's kind of sutra only, and text there is based from the point of view of the Tantra. Yeah? So if you combine the two, then you talk about the same thing as we talk about the Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions, right? So it's important to understand that the Dzogchen tradition comes from the Vajrayana, and in the Vajrayana, also in Gelug, when you study the Gya Samaja and the clear light mind meditation of the Gya Samaja, we talk about exactly the same thing. The interpretation is exactly the same. But then, if you interpret these points from Nagarjuna, you will explain it in the same way as in the Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions. You know? But you just have to make clear that a sutra presentation is different in the Gelug from a tantric presentation.
So going back to that point about kind of, sorry, just very quickly.
Yeah.
So are you suggesting that on a tantric level, the Nyingma have a correct understanding of emptiness?
Yeah, correct.
But on a philosophical level, it's wrong?
No, not at all.
So then how is it refuted?
No. So from the point of view, you have to understand, from the point of view of, because in the Dzogchen tradition, in the clear light mind traditions, you talk about an extremely subtle mind, right? That is either being generated by the power of a completion stage practice, or it's being generated by introduction in the nature of the mind if the Lama is completely qualified and the student is completely qualified, right? So then you can be introduced in this kind of Rigpa, or this kind of, aspect of the mind that is so subtle that actually has a non-duality with emptiness, right? So that's a Vajrayana basic system. But the emptiness itself, the object emptiness, is exactly the same as the sutra system. You know?
I understand.
It's from the point of view of the experience of the meditator that makes a distinction.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got 2 years to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, rushing along because we're over time.
Oh yeah, we're over time. And we don't like to be over time too much.
Oh, sorry. Thank you very much, Geshe-la. My question is a practical one.
Yeah.
I tend to think of preliminary practices as ways to purify such that my mind becomes sharp enough for me to have direct realization of emptiness.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah.
Now, considering bodhicitta, could I engage in preliminary practices as a tool to towards realizing bodhicitta instead?
Yeah, of course, same thing. Because also to realize bodhicitta, it's not easy. right? You need to accumulate merit and purify the mind, you know? So of course, but emptiness has been emphasized in the different biographies of the different masters of the past, and same with the Dzogchen traditions. If you see that certain authentic teachers within Dzogchen, you're not able to attend an introduction nature of the mind of a Rigpa Tselwang if you haven't done preliminary practices, right? So certain advanced levels of practice, including generating bodhicitta, including realization of emptiness, you need to prepare your mind. Yeah? So for that purpose, the more accumulation of merit you have, the more preparation of purification and accumulation of merit you have, the quicker the realization of the Lamrim will come. If it's bodhicitta, if it's emptiness, if it's renunciation, if it's the other aspect, presumed rebirth, death and impermanence. The more you prepared your mind with purification and accumulation of merit, the quicker the realizations come, you know. And that's very clear in the Lamrim traditions that we do Georgia, right? And that's also very in all the traditions, you know. If you read, for example, Zapato Rinpoche's The Word of My Perfect Teacher in Enigma, very interesting commentary on the preliminary practices, right? Within the Lamrim. The Lamrim is the common preliminary, and the set of preliminary practices are the uncommon preliminary practices. So that's so essential. Whatever you like to realize in the path, if it's the Lamrim realizations, if it's the generation states, completion states, if it's Ati Yoga, the Dzogchen or Mahamudra, if you don't have prepared your mind with preliminary practices, you just fish in the dark, right? So that's kind of why it's so important to engage in those practices, whatever realization you like to acquire. The mere knowledge of these things, of course, you can acquire without too much preliminary practices. I'm often mentioned Carlo Rovelli, one of the physicists who has a very good understanding of emptiness, I think, you know, even on the level of Prasangika school. But it's an understanding, it's not a realization yet, right? So to get those aspects of, if you're interested in getting those aspects of the Lamrim or the Vajrayana practices, or in particular bodhicitta and emptiness, because without that, the Vajrayana doesn't make any sense, and Dzogchen doesn't make any sense without bodhicitta and emptiness, right? So the more you engage in preliminary practice, just your realizations will be quicker, yeah? Together with study and contemplation, right? Yeah, if you just go in blind preliminary practices, then that might not be the way forward. It is a combination, right? It's a condition. Yeah, so you have to study, you have to contemplate, you have to meditate, and then you create the right conditions for the get realizations, right? Yeah, yeah. Okay, Sessa, that's it. Yeah. No? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for the first evening. Very, very auspicious and very fortunate, so to say, to have started with this. I feel very fortunate. For me, it was one of my most important and aspiring texts in the 20 years of studies, I could say, and in particular Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, and of course all the commentaries and all the traditions. It's very inspiring, you know. So yeah, very happy to. I don't have much knowledge, but whatever knowledge I have, I'm happy to share. Right? Yeah. So let's dedicate, as we generate correct motivation. Let's also dedicate the brief dedications we have. You know. Yeah. So yeah, most of you know already how to dedicate, so I don't have to explain, right? So yeah, we dedicate for the spreading of these teachings, long and held life precious gurus, including His Holiness Dalai Lama and all other teachers, teach the true path to enlightenment in all the different traditions, as well as for the swift return of Kapche Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And of course, most important, that all beings generate bodhicitta and realize emptiness, right? Yeah. Yeah, so let's dedicate, yeah.
Dagi jine
sabe gewa di tendang doa kyundang kampendang keba jetsun lozam drapai tembe nengbo ringdu selje sho rabe korwe zingam so pendang dewa malu jungwene chere zingwa tenzing gyatso yi jape shite badu tengyur chi du ten chin dang jangye ngewe Zinjo bella kachira zepa Zimdengu mizim pachegi Dena tembe nyamde sho Semjo rinpoche magye panan gigirchi Gyepa nyamba mepaya Gone gonde bewa sho Toni tawa rinpoche Magye panan gigirchi Jeba Nyamba Medbayam Gone Gonda Bawa Sho.
As long as space remains, as long as migrators remain, until they may too remain to dispel the suffering of migrators. May the King of Dharmas and Karma's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the omens of obstacles be pacified and all the conducive circumstances be complete. To the power of having made Singaporean request to you, Lord Sandrapa, may all unfortunate manifestations of degenerate age, illness, famine, quarreling, epidemic disease, grudges, interference, and so forth be pacified, and excellent collections of conducive conditions increase. Please bless me that my wishes be swiftly fulfilled. By evoking the power of loving kindness and compassionate charity, and through the force of making extensive prayers,
may all sickness, war, fighting, and famine be completely pacified,
so that all beings have long, healthy, and happy lives. May the glorious Guru's life be long and stable. May all beings equaling the extent of space have happiness, and others without exception accumulate merit and purify negativities. May be blessed to quickly attain Buddhahood. Kyawa kundu yanda lama dan drame chigi pela lanchuchi sadan langi yante rausane doje changi gopan yurto.
Okay, thank you so much. See you next week. Study well. Yeah.